Well, it is indeed an honor to introduce such a distinguished young man. Matthew Scott first joined the Robeson County District Attorney's Office in 2010. As Assistant District Attorney, in his role, Mr. Scott prosecuted all types of felony cases, but predominantly focused on narcotics and violent crime persecution. During the time of Assistant District Attorney, Mr. Scott worked as a special agent for the United States Attorney. In his role, Mr. Scott worked with the Eastern District of North Carolina Organized Crime and Drug Task Force, focusing on federal persecutions and major drug traffic organizations. Mr. Scott was born and raised in Robeson County, graduated from Purnell Sweat High School. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree from North Carolina State University, and a doctorate degree of law from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 2002. After graduating from law school, Mr. Scott joined the United States Army as a judge advocate and a paratrooper stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina with the 18th Airborne Corps. During his 8.5 years on active duty, Mr. Scott spent the majority of his time dealing with high-profile cases. It has been featured on 2020 and CNN. Mr. Scott is also a combat veteran, served in Iraq, where he was awarded the Bronze Star for service. Mr. Scott still serves his country as a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army Reserve. In addition to his duties with the United States Army Reserve District Attorney Office, Mr. Scott is a deacon at Berea Baptist Church, as a member of a Tri-Warrior Triathlon group which promotes physical fitness within our community. He's also a Supreme Court judge for the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina. So I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Matthew Scott.
Thank you, Command Sergeant Major, for that introduction. Before I get started, I want to acknowledge all the veterans. If you're a veteran, please raise your hand. I want everyone to clap for these veterans for their dedication and service to our country. In addition to, if you're a family member of a veteran, please raise your hand. Now, I'd like to acknowledge these family members because all too often they sacrifice more and put up with a lot more than an actual service member does. Long nights away from parents and service members away from home, dealing with a lot of adversity. So I would like for everyone to give them a round of applause. As Mr. D said, I born and raised here in Robeson County, grew up a couple of miles from this very place. Grew up like many of us, cropping tobacco, picking cucumbers, and working with my grandfather and uncle's brick mason and sandblasting business, and spending the majority of my time during the school year trying to find camps during the summer that I could go to so I wouldn't have to do all those things. I graduated from Purnell Sweat, like you said, and went to NC State University and graduated and went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison to law school. While in law school, my first 2 years there, I had no intentions on joining the United States military. For the first 2 years, I thought I would go to a law school. After law school, I thought I'd go to a law firm, practice law, do a lot of things. But my last year of law school, within a month of my last year of law school, one event happened that changed the course and direction of my life and also gave me a purpose, and that was 9/11. Once 9/11 occurred, I felt a call to serve and a call to serve our country and our fellow man. So within a couple of months of graduating, I was at Fort Benning, Georgia on a C-130 aircraft trying to learn how to either fall out of an aircraft or jump, depending on your perspective. I went from having law professors in class asking me questions to black hats at Fort Benning, Georgia, yelling at me, trying to teach me how to properly exit an aircraft. I spent 8.5 years on active duty. 1 year of that in Iraq. And I want to say, during that year, I missed the birth of my firstborn child. And that's why I acknowledge the family members. Because during that year that I was gone, I left and my wife wasn't even showing. I come back for my 2 weeks and there's a little baby. I leave again and come back and that baby's now 3 months old. So my mother and father and family and my in-laws and cousins and friends had to step in and fill the place where I was lacking, where I was not there. So I thank every family member who has to live through stuff like that on behalf of their service member. Now, when I was also in Iraq, it's where the theoretical became real. My first couple of days there, I was cornered by a battalion commander and asked, he said, Captain Scott at the time, he said, Captain Scott, I had my soldiers see a couple of people digging holes beside a highway where there's been some IEDs been planted, and he looked at me and asked, I need to know from you right now if my guys can kill them. It's where the theoretical became real. I'd spent 4 years of college and 3 years of law school, but my education came from the United States Army. It came when I saw people and learned leadership firsthand because I saw it on a day-to-day basis. It's where I came into contact with people who put aside differences and worked together for a common purpose, no matter their race, religion, or background. It's where people live the Army values of loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, personal courage, and integrity. To them, they were not empty words, but a way of conducting themselves and living their life. My story is not the only one. There's many. It's one of many that come from this 9/11 generation that were called to serve and become veterans. It's people like that served with me. A Major Rob McGovern, who spent 4 years as an NFL linebacker. And after the NFL didn't pan out for him, he went to law school and became a prosecutor in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. He joined the reserves. And then while he was in his office in Manhattan, he saw the planes hit the World Trade Center. He spent the next 4 days volunteering, pulling bodies out of the rubble. And from there, he volunteered to come on to active duty and volunteer to go overseas in the service of his country. I worked with an individual, Major Tagawi Kagasha, who was brought to the United States by his family as a little boy, was not even a citizen of the United States, and raised his right hand to enlist in the 82nd Airborne Division. From there, he went to law school, and after law school in 9/11, he joined the Judge Advocate General's Corps, got his citizenship when he was in the Army, and is one of the greatest officers I've ever had the privilege of serving with. These are just some examples of the men and women who answered the call to serve a purpose greater than themselves. Now more than 3 million have stepped forward to join the ranks of the military since 9/11, which means they volunteered during a time in which they knew they would be going into harm's way. They made up less than 1% of the United States population. They stepped up in the face of adversity and answered the call, and with great sacrifice did extraordinary things in the service of their country. This generation has earned the right to be placed in an exclusive group as one of the greatest generations. Now, it has been said that when a soldier puts on the uniform, they do not stop becoming a citizen. When they take it off, their service to our nation should not stop either. The United States military places a heavy amount of responsibility on our service members at an early age. They have been trained to make life-changing decisions in heavily pressurized situations with a split-second notice. Now, how many can claim? How many people can claim to have more responsibility than a 20-year-old squad leader walking point on patrol in Afghanistan and Iraq? Not many. At a time when we are starving for leadership and solutions in all aspects of our society, we should turn toward our veterans. We should look towards these veterans because they have the leadership qualities and a sense of duty to lead the way. We have veterans who are doctors, lawyers, teachers, law enforcement personnel. Our communities need our veterans and their values, experience, and leadership now more than ever before. All too often when I think of veterans, I think a story given by President Ronald Reagan during his first inaugural address. He told the story of a young man named Martin Treptow. Martin Treptow was a 17-year-old boy, 18-year-old boy who left his job in a barbershop in 1917 to go join the Great Rainbow Division, the 42nd Infantry Division in World War I. Mr. Treptow, or Private Treptow, there on the front lines, died in battle as he was trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. On his body is found his diary. Written in his diary was under the title, My Pledge. He said, "America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will sacrifice, I will endure, I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me and me alone." For many veterans, our country was important enough to endure long separations from families, miss the birth of children, miss holidays, miss birthdays, live in jungles or deserts, lose limbs, and some, like Martin Treptow, lose their lives. While we set aside this day to honor our veterans, we should be thankful every day for their sacrifice, their dedication, and their service. For it is because of their service that we live under the blanket of freedom and that we live in the greatest country in the world. God bless the veterans and their families, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.